Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. We got a beautiful day today and a beautiful guest as well on this week's edition of Discuss Detroit. Once again, I'm Jeanette Pierce, and I'm the director of the City Institute. And Discuss Detroit is every Monday where we talk with local leaders, small business owners, and residents about the city that we love. And today's guest is Dan Carmody from Eastern Market Partnership. And we're going to bring him on. How are you today, Dan?
I'm good. How are you doing, Jeanette? Jeanine.
Pretty good, pretty good. I mean, obviously, lots of difficult things happening in our world, but I think I feel like a little bit of progress is being made, which has been good, obviously. Um, I mean, we know each other, and disclaimer here, we also happen to be neighbors. Though we knew each other before we were neighbors as well. I think you found out I lived here, and we're like, oh, I have to live, by Jeanette. I think that's probably how it worked, right? Something like that.
That's how I describe it now. The world famous Jeanette Pierce.
Okay. Anyway, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Jeanette. I have moved to Detroit in 2007 after Eastern Market conducted a national search. I had spent the preceding 3 decades in sort of the downtown and community development space in other Midwestern cities, and also had a kind of a unique place and food kind of professional background, in addition to managing 2 different community-based organizations that were involved in economic redevelopment activities in recovery mode from recessions of the past. I also worked my way through college making squeeze parquet and Miracle Whip for the Kraft Foods Corporation. I owned a number of bars and restaurants with my dad and my brother in my 20s and early 30s, and sort of was able and actually had a rather privileged youth of spending half my time in the inner suburbs of Chicago and the western Iowa, where my dad bought a farm when I was about 8 years old. So I saw enough around agriculture to become a city planner. It was way too much work to be a farmer, but certainly came to respect those that grow our food. So Eastern Market seemed like a perfect marriage of a couple of different streams of experience that I had, and I can't believe it's been 13 years. It's gone by in a flash.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think most people know Eastern Market, Big Market Day Saturday, all of those things. One of the things that we talk about always on our tours is that, Eastern Market, the wholesale side of the market, that a lot of people who might just come for their, weekly produce don't really know and understand. Could you talk a little bit about that
Sure.
wholesale side of Eastern Market and give us you can give us the 101 on Eastern Market also? That'd be great.
But the historical roots of Eastern Market is as a wholesale market. In fact, the Saturday market was born as a place where growers throughout the week would offer their product at deep discount to be able to start the next week with clean shelves. But it was a 6-day week wholesale market. Hundreds of Michigan farmers back in the day. We like to say from our inception in 1891 to about 1922, we were more or less monopolists in the wholesale distribution of fruits and vegetables in Detroit. And then in the 20s, the Detroit Produce Terminal on South 4th Street opened up, and suddenly Michigan growers had to compete with growers from Texas or Florida or California. And together we ruled as oligarchs until the post-war years. And then in the 50s onward, the growth of supermarkets and regional distribution centers from from Walmart to Target to Kroger, suddenly there wasn't in the United States in general, there wasn't much demand for a wholesale public market. And truly we hang on by our threads. We're down to about 30, 35 growers. And they started arriving this time of year. They'll stay through Thanksgiving. They're there from midnight to 5 a.m. If you weren't up at that time, you might never even know the market actually moves a lot more food in those hours than it does on Saturday. And the primary buyers are independent grocers, which we still have quite a few of compared to the rest of the country, and small produce houses that distribute to, a lot of different customers, including schools and universities and bars and restaurants. So That's a part of the market that we actually think there might be a little glimmer of hope for taking back some lost market share. In the COVID really has exposed what food advocates have been saying for at least the last 10 years, is that this country and many countries around the world, skyrocketing rates of type 2 diabetes or hypertension, which are underlying health problems that affect the fatality rates of COVID almost directly. We have staggering rates of type 2 diabetes and hypertension throughout some of the neighborhoods in Detroit. And a lot of those diseases are diet related, and a lot of people aren't eating as much fruits and vegetables as maybe they ought to defend their immune systems. And so it's a double whammy. And so, we rejoined our work. So people around the world increasingly know that the prepared food diet that we've all kind of gotten used to isn't the best for preventing illness. And so there's a global awakening around having to eat healthier diets. And there's also a global trend towards urbanization and people working more hours, and convenience is still as important as health. And so what big food seems to be unable to do is come up with health that's convenient, and it's created an opportunity. So in the market district, we've seen things like Michigan Farm to Freezer, a regional scaled preservation process that doesn't add a lot of chemicals to the food, but gives people the opportunity to eat Michigan year round. And so whether it's freezing or whether it's dehydration or whether it's fermentation, Michigan grown crops that we can get more out of the field and preserve them for their nutrient density for consumption beyond just the growing season is a real important part of the future of the wholesale market, Eastern market.
Absolutely. And I personally love Michigan Farm to Freezer, and was able to, I still have some great stuff in my freezer because they come in really big bags because it's meant for wholesale, right? So when we talk about food access, right, there's obviously a lot of conversation and important conversation around it. There's also a lot of misinformation, right? I find when we are doing tours, people ask us, but where do we grocery shop? And we know that there are full service grocery stores in the city more than what people think. But talk about that's not just, one of the things I've heard you talk about is that it's not just access to the food. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, I think the term food access implies that simply if we could wave a magic wand and suddenly fruits and vegetables dance on every street corner, that everybody would have a very nutritious diet. And even the fact that the bottom 20% of the economic profile in this country eats 7 times less fruits and vegetables than the top 20% doesn't mean the top 20% is eating as much as they should. So this underconsumption of vegetables in particular does cross across many income groups, but it's particularly true of low-income housing groups, low-income housing low-income cohort. The important point is that food access implies that there's just a supply problem, but it's a supply problem still. It's much better in Detroit than it used to be. We've had a Whole Foods open up. We've had 2 Meijers open up when there were none, and that isn't even the real impact. The real impact of the threat of that competition encouraged about 10 or 12 independent grocers to step up their game. And so while grocery stores are better than they were 10 years ago, they're still not compared to many other cities. And so we still have a lot of parts of the city where the corner convenience store is too much the dominant source of everybody's daily calories. And so food access programs we operate, which include our farm stand program that typically pops up at 25 to 35 sites during the Michigan growing season, where we sell food from the wholesale market and offer in places where people might not have such an easy opportunity to find that kind of food. That's important, as is helping somewhere in the vicinity of 12 to 16 neighborhood community markets through the Detroit Community Market Network, help them provide not only good food in neighborhoods, but also a place for neighbors to convene and talk and discuss things, which obviously this year has to be done with some different means than usual. So those are our 2 primary programs for trying to get food into places where food doesn't normally go, healthy food.
And I think that one of the many things that makes Eastern Market stand out compared to other markets in other cities, well, the fact that it's been there consistently since 1891, where many other markets went away and some have, come back in different, more retail versions, but they're also frequently in other places more expensive
Yeah.
at these places. So the fact that Eastern Market and then these pop-up food stands are actually, really affordable for the fruits and vegetables that you're selling.
Yeah, as we operate the market, we try to build on that old tradition of this is where people dumped food at the end of the week that, quite frankly, wasn't as fresh as maybe some of the other food that they sell during the week is. And so, with slightly older product comes largely lower prices. And so, what we've tried to do is maintain a full price value spectrum. So, if you really want the best morel mushrooms and have $50 that you want to spend per pound, or maybe not that much. But they're very expensive. But you should come early in the morning. But if you have a household income that you need to take advantage of low-cost food, there's an ample supply of that as well. And you can find those distinct vendors that have a lower cost product. And we try to make sure that we have food from all across that price value relationship.
Well,
in addition, the other two legs of the food access. There's two other legs to the stool of sort of improving not just food access, but the consumption of nutrient-dense food. And one is education. Right. And so, my grandmother, like many, would be appalled at my kitchen skills, even though I owned restaurants for 10 years, and even though I helped raise 6 daughters, if people had to rely on my...
She didn't have an Instapot?
If I had
Your grandma didn't have an Instapot to just do things really quickly?
Unfortunately, well, my grandparents were gone when the youngest me was born. So, but I only know that they're old school enough and off the farm enough that they had far more mean cooking skills than I've ever imagined having. So giving people the confidence to be able to cook is an important part of it. And it doesn't have to be, I think sometimes we do a great disservice with all these exotic cooking shows that are on TV, making it far more of a complicated thing than it sometimes has to be. And so we do a lot of cooking classes. We used to do them live. We've converted all of those to virtual in response to the crisis. And so that's important, as well as reducing the cost of fresh fruits and vegetables, because we subsidize all those commodity crops that make up animal feed and milk and all the cereal products. Those types of food products are heavily subsidized, but not so much with vegetables. So you can redeem your SNAP benefits at Eastern Market. You can participate in a doubling program through Double Up Food Bucks. We also have senior WIC program availability during the summer months. And we also, over the last 3 or 4 years, have worked with a lot of our medical providers to provide fresh prescription, which is actually a program where doctors actually write a prescription that come with a voucher for free vegetables to those patients that have some kind of affliction that is treatable by diet, such as type 2 diabetes or hypertension. So all of those collectively help reduce the cost of fresh fruits and vegetables.
I mean, and so those are a lot of great programs that you mentioned. I want to just make sure that people know, dig in a little bit more to that. So when you talk about the SNAP benefits and you being able to use those at Eastern Market and the Double Up Food Bucks, could you talk a little bit about how that works and how you've seen, when you started that? I remember when we were first talking about the idea of it and the growth that you've seen at that, and then and also I think it's great with the Double Up Food Bucks, the whole win-win situation of focusing on Michigan growers to double up.
Yeah, so SNAP benefits, have been available for use at farmers markets. I don't know, going back late aughts. We were one of the first, and at one time I think we were actually statistically relevant in the national use of SNAP benefits at farmers markets, but since that time, a lot more have joined in. And actually, the usage kind of goes up and down as a percentage of total SNAP use. So as the economy improved after the 2008 meltdown, our SNAP usage peaked about 2011, and it's been downward steadily since as the amount of SNAP benefits. And we're still a fraction of all, of the total SNAP benefits in Metro Detroit. The percentage that are redeemed at farmers markets is still, less than 1%. So we got a lot of work to do to try to move the needle and trying to get and the doubling programs help. But as you said, somebody swipes their bridge card at Eastern Market, they get tokens, golden color for use in the SNAP program. And then this time of year, through funding from people like Fair Food Network, we're able to double that amount that they swipe. So if they redeem $10 worth of SNAP benefits, they get $20 in tokens, 10 that are gold that are SNAP benefits, and 10 that are silver from the Double Up program. And the Double Up program is limited to crops that are grown in Michigan, so that it does serve a dual purpose of strengthening the financial ability of local growers at the same time of reducing the cost of healthy food to vulnerable households. So we're pretty proud to have been in that program since 2009.
Yeah.
We have seen, sure enough, COVID crisis kicks in, our attendance plummets at Saturday Market, and our SNAP utilization goes way up. And so when people get into tough times, they do turn to those programs, and we're happy to be there for them, especially when they desperately need it, when people are laid off or otherwise have fewer financial resources to parcel together a diet that's a little healthier and can sustain their immune systems through this terrible virus.
Well, and it's it seems relatively simple, but like a lot of innovative things. I mean, I'm sure for a long time people are like, well, how would you use a SNAP card at every vendor can't have a SNAP card, thing. So doing where you go to the main, Eastern Market Welcome Center and get the tokens, has that been able to be used at all in any of the 25 Mark farm stands or anything? Or is there any way to use SNAP in the?
Yeah, no, all of those benefits. All of those benefits are used to some extent at the 25 sites. Now, some of them might be focused on fresh prescription. Others might just take SNAP. And so we sit outside of a clinic. We'll take SNAP and Double Up food bucks is kind of available everywhere, along with cash and credit and debit.
Nice.
But we'll add fresh prescription at those sites where there's a doctor in the neighborhood where someone can.
So that's free, like the prescription. Then it's free vegetables. That's because or free whatever. And do they specify like tomatoes?
No,
or they just say like 10? Is there a certain amount or just?
It's a dollar amount. So it's usually a $10 voucher specifies vegetables. I guess technically a tomato is a fruit, so you could argue. But
no fruit allowed in the. It depends.
I think fruit is allowed, but we do obviously watch out for some. I get a little bit tripped up in the details here. Certainly, the sugar content of some fruit don't help people with diabetes. And this year we're very excited because Meridian, a health plan provider, is actually participating in Medicaid. Medicare advance programs are more and more allowing this to be a benefit that people can actually claim and get. It really goes from the largesse of a foundation that supports a medical provider of some kind to making it a standard provision of an enhanced Medicare plan. This is huge, and this is something that we want to take this pilot and try to make sure that we can deliver some measurables that can allow that to be rolled out, not just across Detroit, but across all of Michigan. And it's happening around the country. So
are we one of the few places around the country they're trying piloting it in lots of different places?
It's going on. I wouldn't say, I'd say, I personally know of 10 to 20 cities where this is happening. So.
But it's got to be because we have Eastern Market, and
it's partly because we have just
and the team there, that's willing, ready, and able to try some different things.
I think there's a long track record of people participating in the food access space, be it ourselves or be it neighborhood organizations or be it health providers, and so that's come in handy. I just got a call from someone out of Maryland that's working out of a Washington D.C. think tank that has close to cutting a deal with another Michigan insurance provider to do another pilot in Michigan. So that would be 3 that I know of in the state, and I'm sure there are a few that I don't know about. But It seems to be coming. It's the medical care community kind of taking a long time to shift from prevention to encouraging wellness, and that's not an easy shift for them to make. They can't quite figure out how to monetize wellness when they were used to charging for a service that almost encouraged people to get sick. So
Yeah.
it's coming, but we got a long way to go. And we didn't get in, as type 2 diabetes and obesity rates have edged upwards. We didn't get into this problem overnight, and we're certainly not going to get out of it overnight. A lot of these are deeply ingrained habits. As someone, I have fought. I've been on the border between overweight and obese most of my adult life. I'm not. My habits are, are bad enough, and I don't have all the stress of, I think of some. I once had a rental property, and I had a couple of tenants that were basically 40-year-old grandmas who worked two part-time jobs to make ends meet. And I don't know how those people got out of bed in the morning. And they were both these women were morbidly obese and highly functioning human beings just to keep their families together. So this is a deep problem that's tied up in a lot of traditions and a lot of almost malarkey on the part of big food, where they take advantage of, a lot of these incentives to recombobulate food around really cheap inputs that don't necessarily yield healthy results.
Well, and it's one of the first times in human history, whatever you want to say, the last 30, 40, maybe 50 years, where people with less resources are overweight. It used to be you'd have more in the Middle Ages, the more meat you could buy and eat, and now the cheaper food is worse for you. And that's why it's so important to have Eastern Market to be making that, at least because the access isn't like you said, a magic wand, but it's an important step, obviously.
And just having a focal point for the civic conversation around let's all try to eat a little healthier for our own families, for our own neighborhoods. It's beyond just, it has a lot of effects.
Absolutely. Another big part of Eastern Market, and really just since you and the organization came to be, is the small entrepreneur side, the food entrepreneurs. So could you talk a little bit about the food entrepreneurs you've seen, the kitchen, which has been awesome, and where you kind of see the possible future of that kind of mid-size entrepreneur in terms of growth and creation of jobs locally?
Yeah, we've been investing a lot of time in building out an ecosystem to support food entrepreneurs to start with, but all entrepreneurs hopefully down the road. So, Eastern Market, between our wholesale Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday market, serves more than 600 different small businesses. Now, most of them are food, but the Sunday market, Sunday street market, is a lot of artisans and T-shirt makers and bookbinders and all sorts of arts and merchandise related things that we think is another really huge subcategory. Someday we hope to have develop a little more service to support them other than just the Sunday market. And keep in mind that since 1891, the single greatest thing we've done for all entrepreneurs, whether it's food or non-food, is providing a low-cost place where people can find customers. And so when there's 30 or 40
pop-up, right? The original pop-up, 1891.
Pop-ups, snap-ups, public markets like ours, which, and one thing that's interesting about the COVID crisis, I was on a conference call with national and some international, they weren't on, but some of their stories are being shared. And big public markets in cities that have permanent vendors rather than our 600 transient vendors. Keep in mind, we're a little bit the outlier. We're huge, and we only have one permanent vendor, Mo the shoe guy. Everybody else comes, they set up, they sell, they tear down, they leave. And compared to the permanent markets actually suffering through the COVID crisis, it hasn't been as devastating for us as it has been to those that have permanent vendors. So the Queen Victoria market in Melbourne, Australia, which enjoys the closest proximity to its city center and is still there, of any market of any size that I know of other than us. Their monthly rentals were like 400,000 Australian dollars, after COVID, they're down to 40,000 Australian dollars, 10% of what they were. So they're down 90%. And that seems to be more the case. We're down, but not quite that much. And so, the COVID pivot for us has been trying to make sure we can continue to operate on Saturdays, and that took care of itself, because when the time of year when we usually shift from 125 vendors and maybe 4,000 or 5,000 customers, we downshifted to 40 vendors and 800 people instead of going up to 200 vendors and 20,000 people. So the crowds have come back slowly, but we pivoted and we wanted to make sure we kept providing a sales opportunity. That's the first thing we do for entrepreneurs, is make sure we provide a means for them to sell their product. And so the drive-through Tuesday market serves sort of the brick and mortar businesses around the district, a lot of those wholesale businesses.
Oh, awesome. I was there almost every week for the Tuesday market, the Tuesday drive-through.
So Tuesday drive-through is basically aimed at those businesses that were selling to restaurants and bars and hotels that suddenly had no customers. And so now we had as many as 12 of those businesses participate. At least 6 of them are now going to offer permanent direct retail to consumer through an online ordering curbside pickup model. So that's new business for them as the rest of the economy recovers.
Obviously they were wholesale. Maybe they did some retail before, I don't know, but they were all new to me. And now, I am looking forward to being a customer going forward with them,
Yeah, some of them, most of them had the vinyl strips through their front door that you could it's kind of like that scene in Field of Dreams where James Earl Jones goes into the cornfield. You could go there. A lot of people did, and a lot of people were put off by it. But now this helped break down some of those barriers, and more people are using that direct from wholesale purchase model. And so, so we provide a place where people can sell their product. We with our Detroit Kitchen Connect series began providing low-cost licensed space for people to make their product in larger batches than just in their home kitchens. And then over the last few years, we've been really focusing on building a series of accelerators to take companies that are beyond startup and trying to put them on steroids so they can become the next, say, McClure's Pickle, which, Bob and Joe McClure started in Detroit in 2006 or 7. Today, there are 40 employees, and they're selling their pickles all over the world. So our theory is that if we do a little bit, maybe we can double or triple the number of McClures. If we don't do much at all, we end up with just a handful. And so we're always looking. And keep in mind, the Eastern Market District is this mix of both baby startup, early stage 1 and 2 companies that sell at the market and have sort of this low-cost space that we've helped to provide. But next door to people like EW Global or Wolverine that have been around for decades, and they have hundreds of employees. And so how do we replenish and how do we grow that food base so that we can have more jobs and more wealth created in the food sector that stays in Detroit? And so our acceleration program is trying to give those companies that show promise and have some sales opportunities, give them a way to survive early growth, which sometimes can be real stressful.
Yeah.
Companies, companies get a short time lead. They get a big order from Kroger, and if they don't fulfill it, they're not likely to get a second order. And if they don't fulfill it consistently with good quality, they're not going to get a second chance either. So the problem we've seen is with some of the companies get really good at making 50 or 60 whatever a week and selling out of market, or 300 or 400. Right. They're good, but when they have to turn around and within a few weeks get it up to 4,000 or 5,000, as we've seen companies stumble and put themselves at financial risk when they try to grow so fast. So,
well, and I know you've talked before too about how the jobs that are created in an example, using this McClure's Pickles example, right, that are really diverse, where if you focus on one specific sector like tech, it's a very one note type of people and background that they're looking for, and this has a little more variety.
Yeah, a little more variety, and quite frankly, one of the things that makes food less sexy than a lot of sectors is there is a significant amount of entry-level workforce that doesn't need to have a high school diploma. And so if you're trying to get people back in the workforce that don't have degrees, having a healthy food sector is a great way to start. It's not easy work. You gotta be sometimes in cold space on your feet for 8 hours at a time. But generally the starting salaries are in the $16 to $20 an hour range. So it's a beginning of a living wage without having to have a high school diploma.
That's where, and then all the way up to someone's doing global sales, at the same time. So that combination, I think, is one of the things that makes it really stand out. And that we have the space. I mean, we as in Detroit and Eastern Market District, right, to grow those smaller businesses.
Well, that consumed us from about 2015 to till COVID. Was were we going to be able to keep Eastern Market? Because as we looked around the rest of the world and the rest of the country, districts like ours disappeared when real estate investment took off. Urban revitalization usually made the land too expensive for food businesses could no longer afford to stay. And so that's when we began working on a strategy in 2015 that led to the city and the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation and Nature Conservancy hatching a very detailed implementation plan to allow the Eastern Market District to grow by something like 75 acres into the area that's largely vacant to the north and northeast of the current market district. And so that plan's fully baked. We're going into some major rezoning discussions now, but it really provides a template for how to repurpose mostly vacant land in Detroit. It tries to answer one of the biggest paradigms is all that vacant land without any building sites, because there might be 75 acres there, but most of them are former 30 by 90 foot residential lots. There are, upwards of 1,000 to 1,200 of them. We wouldn't even be having the conversation if the city did not already own upwards of 70% of vacant land through years and decades of, non-payment of forfeiture through non-payment of real estate taxes. And so we as an organization, as a nonprofit, have been out trying to get those outliers, whether it's somebody whose parents grew up and still has a sentimental attachment to the site. Is there a site nearby that they could trade for that would still give them a sentimental attachment to the neighborhood, but allow for development to happen with a lot of greenways and buffer areas so that it's a neighborhood that's attractive, not just to work in, but actually those who remain living there are encouraged to stay and add a few people. And really try to provide a neighborhood where people, more and more of the people can actually walk to work, which with insurance rates still maybe not seemingly coming down, is a real important part of household wealth creation in Detroit. So our goal is to keep the 1,500 food processing jobs that are already in Eastern Market. Half a dozen of those companies needed to expand. There was no place nearby to do that. Wolverine, that just went through a major 140,000 square foot addition, the first project in the food expansion area, it had to expand or it ran the risk of losing a major contract. It makes a lot of fresh burger patties for nationwide distribution to people like Five Guys Burgers. If they hadn't doubled their production by December of 2019, they might have lost the contract that currently employs 75 people at a facility along Rivard at Alfred Street.
So they're now they expanded to like the near the DeQuinder Cut side of things, or up by
They're north of the Pepsi plant between at Canfield and DeQuinder Street, right across from the DeQuinder Cut.
Got it.
And that's in addition to all of the other real estate that they own in East America. And it's an additional 75 jobs. It's an additional $45 million investment. The only other site they found in Metro Detroit was down by the airport. And, for them, it was either stay in the city or begin perhaps a process. This was a facility near the airport that was bigger than what they needed just for this expansion. So they might have put another couple of divisions with them. And then, all of a sudden we're running the risk of losing a 700 person, company, or at least half of it.
Yeah.
And so, other companies face the same kind of growing pains, fortunately, but they're landlocked. And we had to provide a way to provide new food manufacturing space in a way that doesn't preclude you from actually having a quality of life in the neighborhood adjacent to it. And I'm really proud of the plan. It uses a lot of greenway and buffer space to do stormwater management, as well as provide some recreational and some green space that makes the neighborhood excellent as a place to work, but also makes it a nice place to live as well.
Is that plan available on the website?
That's all you can find on the city planning department website. I think we have it up on our website. I'll have to double check on that. But if it isn't, we'll put it up soon.
Yeah. But So that actually is a great segue, since I have the website up here, to what's going on at Eastern Market right now. I know you made a couple changes just coming into June. So
Yeah.
basically, how can people interact with the market? How can people support you and the partnership and the market and this food access issue that is a big part of the larger conversation? It's a really important part around the Black Lives Matter conversation that is so important right now.
Right. This gets back to the completely outrageous rates of COVID death to minority population versus majority population. So it's just it gets back to a lot of the food access issues. And in the meantime, in addition to this year's work, transitioned a little bit from food access to providing emergency food. So we were able to secure a major USDA contract to pack 2,000 food boxes a week for free distribution through community partners. We pack, in addition, 1,000 boxes through local philanthropy and local corporate support. So almost 3,000 food boxes of free food boxes are going out. The Saturday market, we continue to provide a ordering system for people that want to support the Saturday market but maybe don't feel comfortable being around a COVID reduced crowd. They can actually go online and purchase from their favorite Saturday vendors and then arrange for curbside pickup between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. on Saturday. And that
and I just want to do
we started that. Pardon?
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to do a shout out for that, the Saturday box pickup too. And folks, it's really, really simple too. You go online Mondays at noon. Is that when it's released? Some stuff sells out, so you got to sometimes get on there. But you can both get a produce box from Michigan growers, but then all those great food entrepreneurs that are normally in Shed 2 that, from Aunt Nee's salsa to Love's custard pies, you can select that, and then you literally just pull up and they take your name and they put a box or 3 in your trunk. And it is absolutely awesome. And I highly recommend it. But also I would say that the Saturday market is probably a lot safer than a lot of grocery stores because it is outside, it is spread out there. You are making people wear masks when they come through the actual sheds and such. And just to give you, I guess, in case people haven't been to Eastern Market, I'm going to throw up this picture really quick.
That's a pre-COVID picture. So we seem to have lost. Oh, there you are. Right. She's back.
Yeah, it's a vibrant space, but just now a social distance, vibrant space.
Right. And so, Tuesday market, we transitioned from a drive-through that I talked about earlier to our regular seasonal Tuesday market last week. So that is actually a very already socially distant. It was always a smaller scale, less dense version of the Saturday market with physical fitness activities. So this week we will resume Zumba and yoga classes socially distant inside Shed 3. And we've actually found a demand because our sheds can handle more bodies than the average fitness studio can. So a lot of fitness instructors have approached us about renting our sheds because they can get to the same number in a class with a lot bigger space than they can in their smaller venues. We'll also be developing by a week from Tuesday a curbside version for to support the Tuesday market as well. The Sunday market starts on June 21st. These are non-essential items. A lot of arts and crafts and do-it-yourself made stuff. Very interesting product mix, and that starts on Sunday, June 21st. We will be closed this year on the 4th of July, which falls on a Saturday. Difficult choice we had to make. Well, we did it for 2 reasons. One is our frontline staff has been putting themselves out there in the front line of virus since this all broke down. We wanted to give them a 3-day weekend. And the second thing is we wanted our vendor community and our staff and our customers, rather than rushing around on Saturday morning before they went and joined their families for celebrations later in the day, maybe take a little bit of time to reckon what it means, the birth of the country and our great expectations, and the inspiring rhetoric of the Declaration of Independence. What can we do as families and individuals in the months ahead to kind of live up to some of that, some of those statements of purpose, and maybe to take a little bit of time just to reflect a little bit. So,
because failing miserably at living up to those,
they're lofty statements.
Yeah.
And so, what can we do to better to really put them into better practice? So
that's great.
So that's kind of other activities are starting to happen. Rumor is we might have our first wedding. All of the activities that people have at Easter Market ceased with COVID. So fundraisers, corporate events, weddings. We have May and June and into early July, and then September, October are very, very busy for those kinds of things. Most of those events, they didn't cancel, but we have our 2021 event calendar is nearly filled up already because people just decided to postpone their 2020 events into the next year. So hopefully we can be open and doing. I think we'll see our sheds get popular for the events people can do, which means events of a few hundred people, but certainly they won't be able to get the events with the density of a few thousand people, of which we were it had become commonplace at the market. So,
well, and I just want to do one final shout out too to all of the the businesses that most of them are reopening that are in the market, right? So that's another way is to, whether it's the restaurants or bars now, again, social distancing, and many of them have come up with, I really love the partnership between DeVries Cheese Company, which has been there since 1887, with 200 kinds of cheese. Shout out to them, my favorite place in the market. But with one of the newer businesses in the market, Beyond Juicery and Eatery, they created this charcuterie kit that you could pick up from them, which is quite a treat when we haven't been able to get out and necessarily have some of that gourmet stuff very often. So
awesome.
Yeah. So that was really cool. So there's a lot of different ways. Don't forget that the market's there is really the message, right? And
yeah, I mean, we're starting to see a lot. The Rappel Street that underwent some major renovations. The businesses on the 2 block stretch there, including Detroit City Distillery and Eastern Market Brewery Company and Henry the Hatter. They're working on closing that street down most days of the week, at least in the evening hours, to provide additional seating. So you're starting to see a lot of creativity. Last Saturday was the first Saturday where the market has kind of gotten increasingly busy, but last Saturday was the first Saturday where people were actually walking around the neighborhood. It felt like old times and it felt good. And it's obviously not what we're used to, but it's a vision of sort of an Easter market that it begins to become bustling again.
Well, and that street, for example, I mean, it's already decorated, right? Because we're not going to get into it because we're running out of time here. But murals in the market, and the visual of the market space is just amazing. And we have a design in Detroit virtual tour that's coming up, and next week we're actually going to be talking to Kiana from Design Course, so we'll get into maybe some of the murals in the market part.
Right.
But it's just a really great newer addition, but there's always been art in the market. That's what we always try to, it's like urban agriculture is not new to Detroit, and neither is, art in the market. We have seen a kind of uptick in both of those things around Eastern Market, especially.
And we'll see urban ag goes gangbusters when times are bad. So it's off the charts this year. And I expect for the next couple of years, we'll see more urban farming than we have since 2008 when times got tough.
And you still have who's running the market garden on the north?
Keep growing Detroit.
Yeah, and they're still doing that through the COVID times and everything.
Oh yeah, they had record demand for all their spring transplants. They've had more people sign up, for the Detroit Urban Ag Coalition than they've ever had sign up before. So it's past 1,600 people are participating in their programs. So it happened. It happened in 1893 with the Silver Panic. It happened in the Great Depression. It happened in the Great Recession. It's going to happen. It's happening again.
Potato Patch Pingree, right? There's Mayor.
That's right, 1893, baby. The Silver Panic.
Yep.
we've survived 4 of those kind of things like we are now.
It's
So.
very cyclical, I mean, and we always talk about the motto of the city, right? Speramus meliora resurgit in ribes. We hope for better things that will arise from the ashes. And the one thing that has made it through all those ashes is Eastern Market, and it's only continued to get more relevant and impact more people through your leadership. So thank you so much for that and for all the work you do.
Jeanette, thanks for having me on the show today.
I'm going to do a shout out last thing for easternmarket.org, and it is a 501c3 nonprofit, and you can donate directly to Eastern Market, and I highly recommend doing that so that all of these programs that they are doing, they can continue to do and help more and more people. One last thing I have to show before we leave is, one of the bigger projects you've taken on this year is this cute little puppy that that we get to see around the neighborhood. We had a little parade with my triplets and this little puppy. Tell them really quick the name and a little bit about this doggy.
That's Bo Maris. He joined us mid-COVID, right 2 weeks after the stay-at-home order. He joins a 2.5-year older sister, same parents, came from the same breeder, and so far he's shown to be have a lot of verve and nerve, and seems like a pretty smart puppy. So I didn't have the early shift this morning. I feel pretty energetic today. It's not unlike we have 6 daughters between us, and this puppy has taken about as much out of us as any one of the kids.
Well, I always like to end with a smile.
It's a fair match, 2-on-1.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we're 3-on-2, so we, with the babies. But
yeah, you got to play zone defense in the beginning. That doesn't seem fair.
It's crazy. We've had a lot of help. It takes a village, right? So, but anyway, I'd love to end the conversation with a smile, and puppies make people smile. So thanks again, Dan, and we will see you around the neighborhood, and appreciate all the work that you do.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Have a great one. Bye-bye. And everybody else, we will see you next week when we're talking design in Detroit. And don't forget to like City Institute on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, as well as our partner organization, Detroit Experience Factory, who makes all this possible. And we're going to be posting all of these great videos on our website so that you can share them. And you can go back and look at previous conversations on City Institute's Facebook Live, where we've had great conversations with a lot of amazing Detroiters so far, and we're just getting started. Everybody have a really great week, and keep on fighting for the city of Detroit that we want to see happen as a 21st century equitable city. Have a great day.